Welcome to the Vertical Sky Journal, the podcast that brings you everything you could ever want to know about Kilimanjaro. The climbing and the fitness, altitude and nutrition, the environment, the wildlife, and the people at the heart of the mountain. Today, something a little different. The men and women who have raced the roof of Africa, the speed records of Kilimanjaro, the astonishing athletes who hold them, and why, for the rest of us, slow will always win.
Yes, and, to truly grasp the magnitude of these records, we first need to anchor our attention firmly in the present moment. We're looking at July 2026.
Right, the John Vance attempt.
Exactly. So he's a British climber undertaking this rather extraordinary endeavor that completely redefines the scale of the peak. He aims to reach the summit and return within 16 hours.
Which is staggering in itself, really.
It is, but the ticking clock is only a fraction of the narrative here. This attempt represents a return to a monumental, unfinished task. He actually tried this exact feat 26 years prior.
Goodness, 26 years.
Yes, and during that initial attempt, severe health complications forced him to abandon the mountain.
Carrying the unresolved weight of that ambition for more than a quarter of a century, that is a fascinating psychological burden.
Absolutely.
Because the human body naturally changes over almost 3 decades. But the mind matures, it gathers this sort of strategic wisdom. Returning after all that time requires an extraordinary architecture of mental fortitude.
It really does. And what makes this attempt entirely unique is the geography of his chosen route. He's pointedly not starting at a traditional park gate.
Right, he's starting much lower down in Mabungo village.
Yes, and the logistics of that specific route are deeply demanding. Starting in Mabungo, which is this quiet agricultural village situated on the lower cultivated slopes, he actually begins by cycling.
Cycling at the side of a volcano.
Indeed. He pedals uphill on these dirt tracks to Marangu Bentoni, and upon arriving there, he leaves his bicycle and transitions entirely to running.
Running from there all the way up the Marangu route to Uhuru Peak.
It's exactly. Right up to 5,895 meters above sea level. And following his arrival at the summit, he descends through Maua village, finally closing the loop back in Mabungo.
So it's a continuous self-propelled circuit.
It is. And his choice of Mabungo is decidedly deliberate. His extensive historical and geographical research led him to conclude that Mabungo is the exact location where Kilimanjaro truly begins.
Which raises a rather elegant philosophical question for you listening at home to consider. How do we actually define the starting point of a mountain?
A lovely question, isn't it?
It is, because when you're dealing with the tallest freestanding mountain on Earth, drawing an administrative line at a park gate just feels, artificial?
Yeah, quite.
It feels rather akin to measuring the height of a giant oak tree, but deciding to start the tape measure at the lowest branches and just ignoring the massive trunk because it happens to be inconveniently wide.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize it. The distinction between an administrative boundary and a geological reality is vital for understanding the mountain's true footprint.
Right, because the official park gates, places like Marangu or Umbwe, they exist for ticketing and conservation management, don't they?
Exactly. They're essentially arbitrary lines drawn through the forest for the convenience of park rangers. They certainly do not represent the physical base of the massif.
No, because the plains surrounding the mountains sit at roughly 800 to 1,000 meters above sea level.
Yes, and the summit is almost 5 vertical kilometers above that. So the villages situated on the lower slopes, places including Mabungo, they sit directly upon the mountain's volcanic structure.
The very soil beneath those villages is tectonic uplift. It is Kilimanjaro.
Spot on. So starting an ascent in Mabungo means you're climbing the entire geographical entity rather than merely the legally protected upper elevations.
It's a much more geologically pure approach to the climb, and respecting that broader definition alters how we view the challenge of a speed record.
It does, yes.
It forces us to look differently at the landscape, and it naturally turns our attention to the past. How have previous generations of climbers defined their own races against this formidable environment?
Well, the lineage of speed climbing on Kilimanjaro stretches back considerably further than most people realize.
Really? How far back are we talking?
We can trace informal speed attempts all the way back to the 1960s, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, British expatriates living near the mountain in post-colonial East Africa would occasionally test their fitness by racing up the slopes.
Using heavy leather boots and rudimentary canvas equipment, no doubt.
Exactly, and carrying heavy chronometers. However, the modern era of the record book belongs entirely to elite mountain runners.
which is a highly specialized discipline functioning as a sort of hybrid of alpinism and marathon running.
Precisely. And for years, the ultimate benchmark was held by the legendary Kilimanjaro. He's an athlete possessing an extraordinary physiological capacity, and he completed the round trip in a staggering 7 hours and 14 minutes.
That figure alone borders on the incomprehensible, doesn't it? To ascend and descend almost 5 vertical kilometers in under 8 hours is just a staggering physiological feat.
It is.
Yet, the record book contains a subsequent statistic that frankly defies belief. I mean, we have to introduce Karl Egloff.
Ah, yes. The Ecuadorian-Swiss mountain runner.
He shattered Jornet's record by a landslide margin of 32 minutes, setting a new absolute benchmark of 6 hours and 42 minutes.
Which is just, well, mind-boggling. But Egloff does possess a distinct biological advantage, having lived and trained extensively at extreme altitudes in the Andes.
Even so, breaking down his pacing strategy reveals an astonishing level of physical punishment, doesn't it?
It really does.
Right.
Upon reaching the summit of Uhuru Peak, where the atmospheric pressure is roughly half of that at sea level, he rested for approximately 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
That's it. A mere 3 minutes at almost 6,000 meters. Barely enough time to touch the wooden summit sign, take a sip of water, and turn around.
And his descent time?
His descent took exactly 1 hour and 42 minutes to complete.
I must pause you there, because we really need to examine the sheer physics of that descent.
It's brutal.
It is. Egloff's downward journey covered ground that requires an ordinary trekker 2 full days of sustained walking. How on earth does a human body survive a 100-minute plummet down the side of a volcano without suffering catastrophic joint failure?
Well, it requires mastering a technique known as scree running, combined with an immense tolerance for muscular trauma.
Because scree consists of loose, sliding volcanic ash and gravel, right?
Exactly. When you're running downhill at that pace, your quadriceps must perform what are called eccentric contractions. The muscle is forced to lengthen while simultaneously under immense tension to act as a biological brake.
Right, so with every giant sliding leap down the ash, the leg is absorbing a devastating amount of kinetic energy.
Precisely. The braking force required when gravity and your own body mass are pulling you down a 45-degree slope causes immediate micro-tears in the muscle tissue.
And furthermore, at that altitude, delivering oxygen to repair those micro-tears is nearly impossible.
It is. The legs are effectively turning to jelly, yet the runner must maintain perfect biomechanical balance.
The cardiovascular demand of executing that precise footwork while entirely deprived of oxygen is just staggering.
Absolutely.
But while Egloff engaged in a pure race against the clock, another remarkable athlete approached the mountain with a completely different ethos. He raced with a standard of absolute, uncompromising self-reliance.
Ah, you're referring to Simon Matu.
Yes, the Tanzanian runner. He holds the verified men's unsupported ascent and descent record. His time stands at 9 hours, 21 minutes, and 47 seconds.
A magnificent achievement, officially recognized in the 2010 Guinness Book of World Records.
And the word unsupported is paramount here, isn't it? It signifies that he had no support crew handing him supplies and utilized no aid stations.
Not at all.
He carried his own food and every drop of water he required for the entire ordeal.
And the metabolic cost of that independence simply cannot be overstated. We often think of weight merely as a strain on the shoulders, but the true penalty is paid by the cardiovascular system.
Because carrying perhaps 10 kilograms of water and gear at sea level requires a certain baseline oxygen uptake.
But when you ascend past 5,000 meters, the available oxygen in the air drops by 50%. Your aerobic ceiling is completely crushed.
So by adding that significant dead weight to his back, Matui increased his body's oxygen demand drastically.
He did. He was operating dangerously close to anaerobic metabolism just to carry the water, let alone to run up the mountain. It's a splendid testament to human endurance and, well, a deep local knowledge of the terrain.
That deep understanding of physiology leads us perfectly into the women's records, because the times there have plummeted at a truly remarkable rate in recent decades.
They really have.
Does the physiological approach look different across the history of these female athletes?
Well, the acceleration in the women's category highlights a rapid evolution in sports science and ultra-endurance methodology. For instance, the first single-day ascent by a woman occurred in 2005.
What was the time on that?
She recorded a time of 13 hours and 16 minutes, and crucially, she reached the summit unacclimatized.
Climbing unacclimatized forces the body into a state of severe crisis, doesn't it?
Complete crisis. Without the weeks required to produce extra red blood cells, the climber relies entirely on a frantic ventilatory response.
Right. The brain is starved of oxygen, and the rapid breathing leads to respiratory alkalosis.
Exactly, which alters the very pH of the blood. It is a feat of sheer agonizing willpower. And that initial mark stood firm for over 6 years.
Until Debbie Bachman lowered it.
Yes, she lowered the record to 11 hours and 51 minutes. She was a Kilimanjaro group leader, you see.
Ah, so her intimate, hard-earned knowledge of the mountain's topography allowed her to choose the most efficient physical lines through the rock formations.
Precisely. But the most dramatic leap occurred in July 2015.
With Anne-Marie Flammersfeld.
That's right, the German sports scientist and ultra-runner executed a perfectly planned attempt. Her scientific approach brought the women's record down to a staggering 8 hours and 32 minutes.
But she didn't achieve this simply by running harder, did she?
No, not at all. She applied rigorous empirical data to her strategy. Flammersfeld utilized precise heart rate monitoring to ensure she never crossed her lactate threshold.
Because if an athlete pushes into the anaerobic zone at high altitude,
The body produces lactic acid faster than the oxygen-deprived blood can clear it. The muscle seize up, and the attempt ends.
right, so by strictly capping her heart rate, she maintained an aerobic state for as long as biologically possible.
Exactly. Furthermore, she managed her biomechanics meticulously. She adjusted her stride length on the steep inclines to minimize the muscular cost of stepping upward. It was a masterclass in efficiency over brute force.
These magnificent athletic feats are genuinely inspiring to hear about, and they connect directly to you, the listener, sitting at home and perhaps contemplating your own journey to the roof of Africa.
They do, yes.
Because seeing these humans conquer the mountain in a matter of hours, a critical question naturally arises. Should you try to emulate their pace?
The honest and definitive answer to that is absolutely not.
Not even a little bit.
No. These athletes represent the absolute pinnacle of endurance specialization. They train at high altitude for a living, constantly exposing their bodies to hypoxic environments to build immense cardiovascular engines.
And furthermore, they execute these attempts with rapid descent plans already established, don't they?
They do, preparing for the very real possibility that acute altitude sickness might strike even them.
For the average climber, attempting to rush the ascent is a guaranteed recipe for returning home without ever standing on the summit. The human body simply cannot adapt to the lack of oxygen that quickly.
It really can't.
Think of it as trying to bake a cake in an oven that is only half as hot as it should be. You cannot simply turn up the heat because the oxygen just is not there.
No. The only variable you can change is time.
Exactly. You must leave it in the oven for much longer.
That is a perfect analogy, actually. At the summit, every breath contains half the oxygen molecules compared to sea level. The body responds to this deficit by hyperventilating and elevating the heart rate.
And if you rush, that physiological stress leads to acute mountain sickness characterized by severe headaches and nausea.
Yes. And in severe cases, rushing causes fluid to leak from the capillaries and build up in the lungs or brain.
Conditions known as high-altitude pulmonary edema and high-altitude cerebral edema.
Precisely. And these are fatal conditions if not treated with immediate descent.
Which reveals the central paradox of Kilimanjaro. On this specific mountain, speed is the absolute enemy of success.
It is.
It brings us to the two most important words you will ever hear on the mountain. Pull, pull. Slowly, slowly.
It's not merely a cultural catchphrase, is it?
No, it is a strict medical imperative. For Western climbers accustomed to rushing and achieving goals quickly, embracing a slow, deliberate pace requires a profound psychological shift.
But the science supporting that deliberate pace is irrefutable. Acclimatization is the single biggest factor in determining whether an ordinary climber will successfully reach Uhuru Peak.
There is absolutely no biological shortcut for letting your body adapt to the thinning air. You cannot rush cellular biology.
You really can't. Taking your time allows your kidneys to release erythropoietin, the hormone that stimulates the production of new red blood cells.
And this physiological reality is precisely why the longer routes consistently carry the highest summit success rates.
Exactly. It's the exact reason why proper itineraries require climb high, sleep low days.
Because walking to a higher elevation during the day purposefully triggers the body's oxygen starvation alarms.
Yes, but returning to sleep at a lower elevation at night gives the body the necessary oxygen-rich time to recover and actually build those new red blood cells.
So really, the best possible way to honor these magnificent speed records is to do the exact opposite of what those elite athletes did.
I completely agree. Take the full 8 days. Walk deliberately and slowly. Give your body the time it demands.
The mountain consistently rewards patience far more often than it rewards speed.
It certainly does.
Which leaves us with a final reflection to mull over before we part ways. What if the ultimate luxury in modern adventure is not how quickly you can conquer a landscape, but rather the rare privilege of having the time to simply exist within it, unhurried, for 8 whole days?
That's a rather lovely thought.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, do subscribe so you never miss the latest from the Vertical Sky Journal. You will find a full written version of this deep dive over on our journal at vertical-sky.com, and we would love you to come and say hello on Instagram, where we are at Vertical Sky Tzbu. Until next time, pole, and keep dreaming of the mountain.